This is the most important lesson that any singer and any performer can learn. It's 2026 and the use of autotune or any other kind of software that alters the singer's voice is just indisputable. Autotune can be used as a just creative expression tool, but sometimes it's used to basically make the singers sound better than they, sound in real life. And I'm not completely anti-autotune. As I said, it is a creative expression tool. Like for rappers like Kanye West, T-Pain, it was really revolutionary when they started using it. And also I know how it is to have a bad vocal day and still having to record something in the studio. Autotune is probably a saver in those moments. But then on the other hand, heavy use of autotune and just altering the singer's voice messes up with their perception of live performances a little bit. Artists in studios right now have a chance to record every single line a few times, having multiple tracks and just being able to work on, almost a single note for hours. But 70, 60 years ago, it looked completely different. I really, really wish I could experience that in real life. It must have been just magic. Music production in the 1950s focused on capturing live performances in the studio, and it was only a decade later with the rise to fame of singers, songwriters, and bands like the Beach Boys or the Beatles, when music production started to be a little bit more complicated. Producers and artists started to use multiple tracks. They experimented with complex arrangements and basically every time tried something new in the studio. However, their voices stayed pretty untouched. So all this made me think, is it that our standards have changed over the years because we expect whatever we heard in the studio recording to be the same on stage? We got used to voices so perfect that we hear every little detail that is not the same in the live performance. But then what can we learn from the great singers of the 50s, 60s, 70s like Bob Dylan, Joni Mitchell, John Denver, or Elvis Presley? So I really started to dig into the music of the 50s, 60s, 70s not so long ago. It was really revolutionary time for music industry in general. But I focused on singers that at least at some point of their career performed folk, country, maybe a little bit of soul. And what I noticed and what I fell in love with is the very intimate and conversational type of performances. These artists were able to stand in front of thousands of people and made the performance seem intimate. And I believe that this intimate atmosphere is a product of the authenticity behind their performance. So this has been one of my favorite songs and definitely my favorite performance of this song because it's completely not perfect. Joni has the power to convey emotions through just simple singing, just standing on stage, very calm even if she makes mistakes, calm but powerful voice. Her face is basically straight, maybe with some smiles from time to time. No fireworks, no dancing. Just her perfectly imperfect voice, as I once read, and I really like this phrase. Even though in this performance she does make some mistakes, no one really cares. Because this is what makes this performance really intimate and conversational. This is a proof that she's singing live. I would say that the prime example of raw and real is basically any performance of Bob Dylan. Of course, it's not to say that singing out of tune and being unprepared is okay and it's cool, because it's not, and it's sometimes really painful to watch and listen to. But I have finally learned that prioritizing pitch correctness over emotions is like focusing on technique rather than the story. And stories are the strongest point of Dylan's art. He knows exactly how to use his powerful voice to convey a message. But every artist conveys the message in a different way. Wise men say, only fools rush. Elvis's performances are a lot richer in choreography, costumes, colors, background singers, even orchestra behind him. But there's something that stays the same. is the emotions behind his voice, is the story behind his song, and not the vocal technique and showing off. I love how he completely changed the arrangement of his song. I believe that this version allowed him to show his tiredness and emotions.
I've seen fire and I've seen rain. I've seen sunny days that I thought would never end.
Okay, James Taylor's voice is basically the same in the studio versions and live performances, but I believe it's not because he altered his voice on stage, but rather he didn't do anything to his voice in the studio. That's why it seems so similar. He is just a great performer and he can really sing. And even though he performs on huge stages and he did a lot of TV shows, you can tell that each of his performances is very, very intimate. And this is my favorite thing behind all of these performances, is the intimacy of them. It is allowing the audience to enter their musical worlds and not just showcasing their skills. So skill is only a tool to convey a message and not something to be sought after for itself.
It don't matter to me where we are, where I want.
But I am not without hope for modern performance and modern music. I know that there are many artists nowadays who have the ability to put on great shows without fireworks and the strong performances without having to have huge stage production. I just think that in this crazy world it's good to look for something that is a little simpler. And I would say that these kind of, let's say, simpler performances show the real courage of the artists, that they're not afraid to show the stripped down versions of their music and themselves. This is what really amplifies their artistry. As a singer, I am relieved to see such great artists like Bob Dylan, Chris Stapleton, John Denver, Joni Mitchell, Elvis Presley just make mistakes, messing up on stage and, being able to deal with it. They're not afraid to show that they aren't infallible. It took me a lot of time to realize that, but when I finally did, it felt like I was given a permission to make mistakes and to be just more relaxed on stage. As a listener, I think we need both. Those great shows with fireworks and a huge stage production, as well as those more raw and, let's say, simpler in production performances. However, I have noticed that more and more people that I know are drawn to the simpler type of music. In the times where everything and everyone can be altered with just a click of a mouse, having something that is more raw and natural is crucial. Let me know what are your favorite live performances. Thank you for watching and see you next time.